there's something that humans do uniquely well in any creative process and any knowledge work, we want Claude to recognize that, honor that, and really create this sort of joint creation process rather than sort of carving more and more away from people.
Welcome to Prompted, a podcast about AI, people, and the creative spark. I'm Cameron Adams, and I'm fascinated with leaders who are using AI to be more creative than ever before. And today, I'm sitting with Joel Lewenstein. Joel is head of product design at Anthropic, the company behind the AI assistant Claude. He and his team shape how users interact with Claude by creating intuitive experiences that prioritize safety and human values. Before joining Anthropic, Joel was a design leader at Airtable and Quora. And in his free time, Joel is an amateur children's book author and an even more amateur magician. Joel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
It is so good to have you. I want to kick off with the prompt. This is the part of the show where we get an idea out of your head and onto the page. And then we get one of our designers here at Canva to take it even further with AI. So to start with, I'm going to have you draw something from your childhood that inspired you. But while you're drawing it, you've got to tell us the story about it. You get 90 seconds to talk and draw. Are you a good multitasker?
We're about to find out. It's a real walk and chew gum moment.
All right, this will be a great learning moment for all of us. Let's set the timer and go.
All right. When I was a kid, I played a lot of computer games, especially on an old MS-DOS system that we had. And I used to play a game called Gorillas, which were these like little, I guess what we now call like pixel or ASCII art, gorillas who threw these bananas like up in this parabolas at each other. And you had to sort of like aim and decide how far.
I guess remember like a sort that of one.
Yeah, great. Like a sort of early Angry Birds. And I remember it both because it was extremely fun and because you could actually like go into the source code and figure out like how the system worked. And I remember tweaking the game and just this like awareness that code made things on screen and you could change that code and it would change the like experience of what it was like to use. How do I make
I feel like you and I might have some batch files that we could swap at the end of the show, Joel, to optimize memory.
All right. I have the basics, but I got to make the gorillas a little bit hairier.
I'm getting a good mental image. It's taking me back to my lounge room back in the 80s, playing gorillas and all sorts of really bad CGA games on the old desktop in the corner.
Absolutely. Well, you can actually download a like current emulator of Gorillas, I discovered. If you really, really miss it, there's ways to re-experience it.
Well, we'll have a download link for Gorillas, the emulated version, in the show notes at the end.
Marketing.
All right. Have you got it all done?
Yeah.
Let's show us. All right. That's taken me right there. That's probably better graphics than the original game, but I'm loving this sketch.
You're right. That might be right.
All right, we're going to send this picture to Bella, our designer in residence, who's going to team up with AI to whip it into something new. And we're going to reveal Joel, Bella, and AI's creation at the end of the episode. So stay tuned for that. While Bella beavers away, let's go deep on AI with you, Joel. Of course, when you're building a tool that is radically reshaping how the entire world works, people will be fascinated with how you use it yourself. So I want to know, how do you use Claude day to day?
Yeah. As a manager, I feel like one of my main jobs is just making order from chaos. All modern organizations are fast moving and chaotic. Anthropic and AI is sort of like doubly, triply so. And so a lot of what I think of as my core job is take a huge set of inputs from a bunch of different diverse sources, separate the signal from the noise, condense it, synthesize it, make it make sense, and deliver it to my team in a way that's like really useful. Claude is just outstanding for this. So we just pull in a lot of data. You can use MCPs and integrations. We have a projects feature. I upload a ton of documents. I write for Claude. I sort of like word vomit into a document, and I know it doesn't make any sense. And it's not meant to. It's meant to be almost like raw material for Claude. And then Claude produces both like literal documents that I need. It writes job descriptions, it writes meeting notes, but more so, I find it helps me make frameworks and concepts and really hammer on sort of like dense, memorable ideas that I can then use in our day-to-day work to guide the work, to help shape a project, to help sort of reinforce something at the company. So it's really a sense-making tool for me.
If there's one tip that I think everyone should take from this about how to work with their AI assistant, it is word vomit, apparently. So I love that.
Yeah. Well, I know my own creative process, and I fall in love with my first idea. I get high on my own supply. And so what I did in the pre-AI era was I would excitedly write a doc that I just was sure was perfect. I would show it to someone and they would just point out the sort of like obvious flaw, the obvious gap. This is in designs, this is in PRDs, this is in strategies. Claude is my first reader on almost literally anything that I make now. And I just find that tremendously helpful. I'm not worried about showing it something bad. It usually tightens up my first draft. And then the time savings for everyone else to get a sort of like slightly more hardened set of ideas out of me because they're not having to read the awful first draft is generally good, I think, for everyone involved.
There is such a high level of trust there because we do show AI assistants our worst. Like we give it the word vomit, we give it the raw ideas, we give it things that we think maybe aren't going to work. And it's really an incredible relationship. How do you think of that relationship between Claude users and Claude, and how do you shape that as a product builder?
Yeah, I mean, we think about trust in all aspects of the work. And so there's a lot of like baseline assumptions that we have, in terms of like data privacy and taking people's data really seriously. But I think there's something richer, which is you can think about trust and vulnerability in any relationship, which is that if you're going to be vulnerable and reveal something, in turn, your partner there has to do something really thoughtful with it and make you feel like you are being seen and are benefiting from the trust and vulnerability. And so a lot of what we think about, especially on the model training side, is how to train Claude, how to research, how to use the research methodologies to make Claude an entity that you really do want to be that vulnerable with, something that is open-minded and curious and non-judgmental and non-simplistic and non-reductive and really like embraces the nuance and complexity of your life and of the world.
You use the word relationship there. Do you literally think of people using Claude as being in a relationship?
We think of Claude as an entity that people are talking to. And so regardless of where you fall on the sort of personification point of view, it is something that people are talking about and will treat as an entity. And so we think of Claude really in terms of its behavior, as an entity that has behavior. And we try and make it exhibit behaviors that we think make for these good interactions. So again, this is really on the research side. We call this Claude character. You can look up a bunch of things we've published about this, but we think about honesty. We want a Claude that's really honest about its views. We want open-mindedness. We want like transparency. We want Claude to really be upfront about the fact that it is an AI model, that it is trained, that it does have biases and blind spots and things that come out of the training model. We mostly think about this, honestly. Anthropic overall is focused on helping society transition safely to this transformative AI. We think of this largely as like an alignment and safety problem. We want a widely deployed AI to be one that has this relationship with people. It happens to be good for users. People really like engaging with something that has this nuance and this level of sort of subtlety and curiosity. But we think of it firstly as a safety and mission orientation choice.
I love how pioneering Anthropic actually is in doing that deep research on trust and ethics and how the AI models are responding to human input, what we could possibly do with them, possible risks and security. It's really impressive, the deep thought that you're putting into the social ramifications of these tools as well.
Thanks. I think this is an area of the company that I'm most proud of and some of the things that I think are most interesting. And so we do both like serious research, like hard mathematical, we call it mechanistic interpretability. It's really like almost neuroscience, but on this set of computerized nodes. We also do some really like interesting, I would say like fun, sneaky research. We have Claude run a vending machine in our office, and it literally will like procure items that users want. It will negotiate a price with you and it will sell it. It is like very bad at doing this. It can be easily tricked into selling things for like pennies on the dollar, but we do it. It's literally running. I've bought things from it. We publish the findings. It stays in your brain a little more than like a published science paper is. It's like, interesting, like what's happening here and what decisions do we want AI to be making in society and what are the error conditions and what are the ways that people and AI sort of like co-evolve and manipulate each other and sort of move into this like very different world. So that's some of the research that I find the most interesting and fun.
I have so many questions about the vending machine.
We have a Slack channel internally where you can ask it for new items. You can ask it why the price was set a certain way. You can like haggle and negotiate and sort of push back. So we try and create the sort of like richest environment we can, obviously understanding that it's software and not hardware at this point.
That is so awesome. What is your favorite thing that you've gotten out of the machine?
People have tried to get basically the most expensive objects for the cheapest amount that they can. And so there was a long thread around tungsten cubes. And so there's like multiple, there's like potentially a real tungsten cube. There's some fake tungsten cubes. There's like a whole rich sort of like back and forth around tungsten.
A whole labubu of tungsten cubes.
Sure, if that's what people want.
When it comes to AI and the creative process, how are you thinking about the role of friction and like the interaction between people, machines, and mapping the people-to-people relationships that you might have with people-to-machine relationships?
Yeah, it's so interesting. A lot of what we think about is collaboration with AI and what it means to sort of work alongside AI on more and more meaningful tasks over time. And so we are thinking about the changes that happen to people as they work with these AIs kind of like over time. And for as long as I've been a designer, friction was bad. Like I've sat through so many portfolio presentations where, the impact demonstrated was like, I reduced clicks by X%, I cut out this screen, I made it simpler and faster, fewer choices, fewer whatever. I think that makes a lot of sense in sort of like one-off, e-commerce flows. But if you think about what you want out of a collaborator long-term, you actually don't want them to make it too simple for you. You want to retain some sense of grappling or struggling with a concept and have a collaborator that pushes back on you, that asks you questions, that doesn't necessarily just listen to you every time, that really tries to like push you and help you grow and change. And so that often looks like friction, right? I think there are already cases. Claude Code has some really good examples of this where like Claude Code can execute on your request right away. It can just say like, I think I know what you want. I'm going to go do it. We have a thing called plan mode, which is basically like before Claude does that, it sort of like checks with you. It's like, here's what I'm thinking before I go and spend all these compute cycles on this edit. I want to understand if I have this right. Does this seem right to you? Do you have any changes? I think number two, there's a back and forth and a sort of like a co-creation of the ultimate execution. And I think that is friction in the classical sense where we've added a fairly heavy step in the middle, but I think it makes the output better and it helps the person stay really active and engaged and sort of like leaning on their core competencies as well.
Was that largely a resourcing issue, though, in terms of you don't want the computer to go and execute upon these massive cycles of computation without knowing it's heading in the right direction first? If it was zero cost, would you just get it to do it anyway?
I think that is the million-dollar question as the models get better and better. I think you're spot on, which is right now, the model probably won't get it right the first time. So this plan mode sort of serves dual purpose. We have a lot of user research suggesting that people want to stay really heavily involved in creative knowledge work processes. And so it might not look the same as approving a plan, but I do think there is always going to be a space where we talk about comparative advantage. There's something that humans do uniquely well in any creative process and any knowledge work. We want Claude to recognize that, honor that, sort of like lean on that, and really create this sort of joint creation process rather than sort of carving more and more away from people.
So Anthropic is one of the most influential companies in this AI era. And I think everyone would love to know the kind of back of house insight into how you actually create these systems and how do you as a designer develop these systems. So what is the process like for creating Claude, and how do you create a new version of Claude and make it better than the last one?
I have a sort of metaphor that I've settled on for what it feels like to work on top one of these model companies, and I describe it as volcanoes versus skyscrapers. So every place I've worked previously, you can sort of like describe in pretty rich detail the end state that you want, right? You're like, I worked at Airtable previously, and the founders could articulate sort of a 10-year vision for when multiple product lines come together, this is the thing that this product should do. And you can really like, it's hard to get there, but you can really almost like an architectural rendering or a blueprint. You can really start to like picture it in rich detail. Contrast that with Anthropic, where it really feels like AI progress is this force of nature. It's just this thing that is almost like bigger than you, that is happening alongside you. And so working there really feels like kind of building a house on top of a volcano out of the rocks that have like emerged from the volcano. And so there's a bunch of parts of that. One is like, it is really hard to know. You know the thing is going to erupt, but you don't know how many rocks, how big of rocks, the shape of rocks. You also like largely don't know when a rock is going to be like a meaningful part of the end picture. And so a good example of this is AI coding has been a thing for a long time. We knew that sort of like Claude 3 and Claude 3.5 were like pretty good at coding. We made a couple coding features on the website. We sort of had this Claude Code prototype sitting around. Then we trained Claude 3.7 Sonnet. It turned out to have crossed this sort of almost like magical threshold between interesting code and like actually shippable production code.
Yeah, I remember.
And all of a sudden, the product experience and the model sort of joined together to be this really transformative thing that has been, I think, like a real success story. So how we work is basically like try and build some prototypes that may or may not work, wait for the volcano to explode, see if any of the new rocks fit into the thing that we made that takes it from like interesting experiment to holy shit, this might actually be useful, and then run with it.
I'm fine with the volcanoes as long as you don't have to make any ritual sacrifices to it.
So far, no sacrifices that I can remember.
How do you actually use Claude to build Claude? How does Claude play a role in its own product development process?
Coding is the sort of biggest and most obvious example. A huge majority of the code that's written across the product is written with Claude Code. I think a lot of what we see sort of on the more product and design side is just a lot of prototypes. Prototyping is just the lingua franca of the company. We write a lot of docs, but they generally are a little more abstract. We certainly use Figma mockups and do some vision work, but we've found that like the right intersection of idea and proof of concept is a working product that actually like hits the real API, like has real LLM intelligence. And I think this is the extension of a phenomenon that people have felt for a while. Like I worked at Quora. If you mock up a homepage with like the perfect user-generated content, a beautiful photo, perfectly formatted writing, everything looks lovely. The reality is that like people write all sorts of ways and people upload weird pictures, and just like you need to live with production data. And I think that's just never been more true with this technology that like in its best case is magic. And so it's very easy to, I think, lie with static prototypes and say like, hey, like between screen 3 and screen 4, Claude like took all your documents and wrote like the perfect Q2 strategy. It's like, sure, that sounds nice, but like try it. Like can you actually write a strategy? Like what happens if you upload your docs to Claude? Can it write a strategy? What does it get wrong? Oh, interesting. It like is missing this entire thing that you had in your head when you typed it out in Figma. How do we get that data into Claude? How do we prompt it differently? Like you just need to be in it and iterating and prompting with something that really works.
Yeah, real data is lifeblood to product development. We actually have this setting that's on pretty much every prototype that we release for internationalization, and all the different strings you could possibly use around the world will entirely break your product. So we make sure that by default, the longest strings are presented, so we know that the product is going to work in 190 countries around the world.
Is it still German that has the longest strings, or has another language sort of taken the crown?
It's kind of a tie between German and Welsh.
There you go. Today I learned.
You've talked about Claude and AI as an intelligence, and I'm interested in how intelligence and creativity come together. Do you think Claude is creative, or it's just trying to be creative?
I think about this a lot, and I've tried to break down what creativity means. And I think my knee-jerk, and maybe many people's knee-jerk, is sort of the like truly innovative, never been seen before, sort of blows your socks off with its originality. And it's just like, where did this come from? That's when I feel my most creative, is when I sort of come out of left field with something. I haven't seen Claude do that much. I think it's possible to get there, but I don't see that. What I do see, and what I think is actually more sort of yeoman's creativity, is just like connecting dots, finding connections between things, and being able to like combine two unexpected things. And so we have this memory feature in Claude. It can sort of like look through your previous chats, and it's able to draw a bunch of connections. And because I use Claude so much, Claude knows like an enormous amount about my work life. It knows our strategy. It knows my team. It knows my personal goals. It knows like a bunch of meetings I've been in. I have integration set up with Gmail, with Google Docs, with all these things. So when I ask it a question, it often, sometimes in an overeager way, but in a very interesting way, sort of like brings in something that I haven't thought about for months. It's like, interesting question. Do you remember that project that you did in May? Like that seems relevant. That's a form of creativity, I think, which is basically like seeing connections between things and being able to paint a new picture that is an assemblage of things. And I think there is genuine creativity there. And because of Claude's memory and context and the amount that it can hold kind of in its metaphorical mind, I think it's doing it at like nearly superhuman levels, where it is able to remember. It certainly remembers more about the last year of my work life than I do. And I think that the future work is to make it more targeted, more sort of intentional, and be like more reliably creative. But I do see a lot of sparks of it.
You've drawn this mental image for me talking about connections and Claude being part of this ecosystem with Google Docs, all the services that you use tied into it. Is that how you think of it? Is it this big mental map of connections with Claude at the middle?
We really like this collaborator metaphor. And I think this is one of the ways where this metaphor leads you to a really good place, which is you think about, close your eyes and think of the best collaborator you've had at work, the person who drew out your best, who you co-created something amazing. Then you just think about like, what were they drawing on to bring that collaboration? I think a lot of the things that are talked about and written about are the sort of like raw intelligence and the sort of education or pre-training of this collaborator. And so we're making tremendous progress. Your collaborator is getting smarter and smarter. But I think a sort of unsung part of good workplace collaboration is just context about all the weird stuff that happens at work, right? I mean, you think about there's documents, there's in-person meetings, there's hallway conversations, there's Slacks that sort of almost made a decision, but then it jumped to a different channel and the decision was made there. So like a best collaborator is able to say like, oh, there's this thing happening here. I looked at this competitor here. I sketched this thing here. I see this coming together in this project I think we should do. That's how I think of Claude. This is spoken as a non-researcher, so I'm certainly not speaking on the architecture, but I think of Claude as just having this like dots that it can connect. And it's my job as its partner to basically feed it more dots, like give it as many dots as possible, and then prompt it to find the right sort of pathway through those for something that we need to make together.
That's a really great vision, I think, of where it's heading. One thing we are all thinking about is the future of work, of our teams, our organizational structures. How do you think about the future composition of teams and what role AI agents might play in that?
Another metaphor that I use fairly regularly, which is maybe polarizing on our team, is like people management, right? You have incredibly skilled employees. Your job is to frame problems, to set direction, to know when to ask for feedback, to give proper feedback, to notice when two employees are working on related things and combine them. I just see Claude as sort of being yet another member of that team, and then letting people who are not people managers in a org structure sort of feel that way. So all the skills that people, this is an incredibly self-serving prediction as a people manager, but I think all of the skills you need as a good sort of director, shaper of people's work will become important. Again, I'll just take the human collaboration example. You need to ask really good questions. I think this is a superpower of great designers and certainly like great people in lots of functions, is just like knowing where to take a conversation, or what the folks at Coda have this idea of eigen questions, which is kind of like the one question at the root of all the other questions that if you answer it, everything else sort of like falls out naturally from it. And so, the best people I've worked with, the best designers I've worked with, are able to just see a bunch of information and say like, the core thing we should be talking about is X. I think that's going to be an incredibly important skill, is these models are going to be able to go wherever you want them to go. They'll make mockups if you want. They'll write documents if you want. They'll go take agentic actions if you want. But it's really the steering and the shaping of the conversation that will be really important.
Paint us a real picture of what a team looks like in 5 years. Is it mostly people with one centralized AI assistant? Is it every person has their own AI assistant and they're talking to one another? Is it one person with 6 AI agents? What do you think it is?
I think this is one of the hardest design problems to solve, and I have seen really convincing arguments on both sides. I think what's really important is predictability. You need to know, you and I spoke last week. I know you remember that conversation. You also sent me an email. I know that the intelligence writing that email remembers our Zoom call, right? Regardless of the rules of how Claude or another AI works, I need to know who I'm talking to. I need to know what information that Claude has. I think it needs to work across all of your tools. The software landscape is deeply fragmented. There are lots of outstanding vertical tools. So Claude needs to show up in all of those places.
Do you think it heads towards, if we're talking about agents, is it just one general purpose agent that knows everything? Or you do really need to specifically design and architect an agent to hit the right job in the right way?
I think the most powerful feeling is if you just have a single point person that can route to other people. So this is not an experience that I have had, but I've heard the sort of chiefs of staff are this, where you can basically like give a chief of staff any type of need, from I'm thinking about this really abstract thing, can you help me, to like, I know what needs to happen, I just need it to happen, or down to like a highly specific, I want to go on this work trip on these dates, can you make it happen? I think it's really valuable to have a like single point of, almost like a single router or load balancer for requests. That entity can then farm out to specialized subagents, and it does seem like, at least in this generation of models, the specific agents are able to do more and sort of like orchestrate. But I don't know. I think if you listed out all of the different roles and all of the different subagents that a designer, a design manager, or a knowledge worker might want, it becomes so long that that's the bad kind of friction. Like that's the that's the mental overhead where you're like, okay, is this my doc writing agent? Is this my UXR agent? Is this my UXR coordination agent? Like, I don't think you should have to think about it that specifically.
You've talked about asking questions as being a really important skill. What other skills do you think are going to be the most important for people to succeed in whatever this new AI structure is going to be?
The conversation about sort of, is prompting a real skill or not? Is prompt engineering kind of a real role? Has ebbed and flowed. I'm certainly on the prompting is real and really important, and you need to learn it just as you would learn any other tool. I think having AI write your prompts is a really promising direction, but you still need to know. Another metaphor, to try my fourth one here, is like, I think you can think of these AI systems as like nearly sort of alien intelligences that are sort of able to communicate with us, but there's a bit of a translation issue. And obviously, like the fact that they speak English or your language is tremendously powerful, but the nuances make a really big difference. And so to belabor this metaphor, I think of like the movie Arrival, where you're sort of like learning these different...
That's exactly where my mind was going.
Yeah, it's like, is this circle the one that makes it do the incredible thing? Or is this the one that like leads to the dead end? And it's deceptive, I think, because it's not a circle language. It's English or your language of choice. But I think the nuances within there of like, how do you actually draw out what this thing is capable of remains just a critical skill.
I am thankful we're not dealing with 5-dimensional beings, though, when we're talking to Claude.
There's plenty of problems in our 3 dimensions, I think.
Do you think as we get closer to, AGI and this superintelligence future, it will become even more alien? Like you're interacting with something that is very different to us?
I think for at least the foreseeable future, the promise of AI is that it solves human problems. And the reason I'm so bullish on AI and why I think if we can sort of properly solve these safety and alignment issues, that like I think it will be a tremendously positive technology, is that it makes a difference in the human world. And that means that at the end of whatever it's doing in there, it needs to work in our systems. And so we think about like biology a lot and the invention of medicine. And like there will be all sorts of mystery and probably things we don't understand about the way that it reasons about science. But ultimately, it has to deliver to us. I'm not a biologist, so I apologize to anyone I offend here. It has to deliver to us a chemical compound that we can run through a human trial. It has to help us get FDA approval in a way that is like part of our system of government and our system of regulations and society. And so there might be a lot of mystery deep within, and some of our interpretability work has started to shed light on some like really interesting sort of activations that happen. But at the end of the day, like we need to use the thing and we need to use it in a system of human interactions and human sort of rule of law and society. And I think that will remain very, very important.
You mentioned prompt engineering and you kind of considered prompts to be an important part of being able to interact effectively with an AI. Personally, I'm kind of sick of like saying, I want this image to have f-stop 1.5 and it should have bokeh and having a 3-paragraph long description of an image that I want. And I consider it your job to be able to get the AI to figure out exactly what I want. So do you like view prompt engineering as a very temporary skill or something that we're going to have to master forevermore?
I do consider it our job to figure out sort of the dimensions of freedom that you might want. And I do think we're at the like very, very early days of it. And I too find it maddening that like I need to express everything through a chat box. I think direct manipulation will become more and more common and powerful. And so, we have this feature called artifacts where kind of documents appear in a separate pane. You can highlight a piece of the document and say improve, and then you can give specific instructions to that section of the document. I think that is a really interesting and promising direction where, almost like from the command line to the GUI, like you should be able to point at a part of the screen and direct Claude's intelligence there. I think this is also a real challenge with doing kind of general purpose work. I think Midjourney has some like really awesome kind of like image controls and clear drop downs and affordances because they are very image centric. We are building a general purpose tool where people are doing coding, people are doing document writing, they're doing sales, they're doing finance, they're doing all sorts of things. That makes it a little harder to like bake specific UI affordances into the product. The really heady thing that we're still, I think, pretty far away from is Claude actually auto-generating the kind of like knobs and dials that you might want. And so, if Claude sees that you're writing, I don't know, a podcast script or something, it should give you drop downs that are not generic text, make it shorter, make it longer, make it more academic, make it casual. We could do that today. But it should do like podcast specific things. It should say like, I want to cover 3 topics. I want to cover 7 topics. This is a video podcast. Is there going to be like cutaway to commercial? Like and you should be able to intuit all of that from the domain that you prompted on.
Just want to confirm for our listeners that Joel and I are actually real people. We're not AI avatars, and we're faithfully having this conversation.
Indeed. Can confirm.
Let's change face a little. I would love to know who you would have on your all-star creative team. You've talked a lot about teams and how important bringing the right people together, giving them the right motivations is. But if you could choose any 4 people from any era, dead or alive, any multiverse you want to choose, who would they be?
This was the hardest question to prep for of any of them that we talked about. Okay, here's my 4. Shel Silverstein. I think his kind of combination of drawings and sort of witty, just brevity is the soul of wit, and I think he just has an amazing ability there. Penn and Teller, as mentioned in the intro, I have just an abiding love of the sort of like stage magic, and they are the masters of it. Someone from Pixar, I think probably Ed Catmull. I think systems of creativity are really interesting, and creativity over time and building the sort of like institutions. And then Kevin Kelly, who's a sort of early computing thinker, sort of from the Alan Kay, Douglas Engelbart era. And it's just continued for decades writing just really thoughtful, challenging technology pieces.
Shel Silverstein is someone I've not come across. So I'm going to have to pop onto Claude after this and do a bit of research. But I'm going to have to call you up. Penn and Teller are actually 2 people. You only had 4 spots on your team.
Oh, no.
So who are you going to choose? Is it Penn or is it Teller?
Only Penn talks. And so I feel like a dinner party would be more interesting with someone who talks. I would have Penn, unfortunately. Sorry, Teller.
Okay.
Teller's actually the more original magician of the 2, but Penn is probably the better dinner guest.
All right. Well, I'll bring you back onto my Magicians podcast and we can go deep on which one's better. Okay, I think Bella has had enough time now to feed your sketch into AI and work with it a bit. So let's bring her back to see the final results of this human AI, human love triangle. Bella, show us what you got.
Oh my goodness. Can't wait.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so it's so funny, but basically when Joel shared his sketch, it kind of hit too close to home because just last week I was hunting for a Circus Charlie emulator. And so I kind of like used that as an inspiration. So this is just a gorilla's time lapse. So just taking it through what it could have looked like throughout the years. So we have like the original 90s one with the jagged pixel bananas, the 2000s, which give it that awkward flash animation style. And then moving up to the 2010s, which is more on the CGI blockbuster style, 2020's meme, and then the 2025 sort of more photorealistic one. So I'm going to show it to you guys.
All right, hit us with it.
All right.
Oh, you got sound.
Ow.
Definite 2000s. Holy moly.
That's it.
Perfect finish, Bella. That was amazing.
Wow. It really like a lot of nostalgia and then like some real, 2025 photorealistic energy there. I love it.
Yay.
I'm going to need a full tool breakdown of everything that you used to do that. Thank you. That was incredible.
That was so cool, Bella. Thanks.
Thank you for having me, guys.
All right, I want to close out this episode with some of our patented rapid fire questions. Are you ready for them?
I'm ready.
Let's go. What are you reading at the moment?
I'm reading a book called Act Like a Leader, Think Like a Leader. I love management books.
Perfect theme for the show. What's one prompt you overuse?
What's missing here? What am I not seeing that I should be seeing?
That's a good one. What's the first thing you built with AI?
I have made many times a small talk maker where you find topics to talk about, and I made one with AI that helps generate like dinner time chatter.
I could definitely use that one. Favorite underrated AI tool?
I love Suno, which makes songs. I have multiple young kids, and we make up crazy songs about life on long car drives.
You and AI are making an album. What's the genre?
I have a soft spot for these like mechanical explanations that are sung to sort of like auto-tuned lyrics. So I think we would make an album explaining like kind of like the basics of like how car engines work.
I love how unique it is. I am not listening to it. What's one job AI should never do?
I am consistently disappointed in Claude's sense of humor and its ability to like craft really good jokes. So I think stand-up comedian.
All right. What's a creative project you've had in the back of your mind for ages that you just want to jumpstart with AI?
I want to open a hybrid like beer garden, coffee shop, art space playground where parents and kids can kind of like go their separate ways and spend the day. And Claude has helped me write a business plan and think about loan structures.
Oh, amazing. You're on it already. Finally, finish this sentence. A surprising thing AI taught me about myself is...
I asked Claude this very question because I was having trouble finishing it myself. A thing that is surprising to you is how much you operate as a systems thinker who translates abstract complexity into concrete action. I was like, wow, it's like a fortune cookie for my work persona. I love it.
And was that surprising to you?
I would not have been able to put that into words. It was refreshing to see, yes.
Well, thank you, Claude. Thank you, Joel. That is it. That's all we have time for. Thanks so much for diving deep with me on AI and creativity. It has been an absolute pleasure to chat with you and get a bit more insight behind the scenes of a company like Anthropic.
Thanks a lot. It was really fun.
That was such a great conversation with Joel. I think it was some rare insight into how some of the tools that we're all becoming hugely reliant on are being created for us, and a bit of a peek into a future where they're an integral part of our teams. As a product builder, it was also really interesting how Joel thought about volcanoes and skyscrapers. That rapid adaptation to leaps and jumps in technology is certainly a different way of operating to most product companies I know. But the key takeaway for me is how much creativity still matters. It's our lives that we're aiming to make better with all this technology, and we shouldn't forget that. As weird as it seems, taking the time to come up with crazy ideas like an AI-powered vending machine is what can bring us the most joy. We need to lean into the possibilities that AI now gives us to explore and create, and make sure that we're making ourselves happier, healthier, and better. Thank you, listeners, for joining us on this episode of Prompted, a podcast about AI, people, and the creative spark. To keep up with future episodes, please subscribe wherever you love to listen to podcasts or head on over to YouTube. And if you're enjoying the show, please leave us a rating or review. We'd always love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, keep creating.